you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. And now here's your host, Rich Barris.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers, folks. All right. So Trump spoke after being arraigned yesterday in federal court. I don't want to play a whole bunch of clips of this, but I do want to I want to play one first, which I think is funny. But then I do want to talk about something he said last night in the speech, popped in my head, and I'm going to share with you. Because on Monday, Robert and I were talking about this shift that nobody's talking about. Like, why is this happening? And Barnes, which credit where credit's due. Apparently, somebody told me Scott Adams has been talking about this for a while now. So I decided to throw two questions, agree or disagree, basically probing whether or not Barnes and Scott Adams are right. And I don't want to give away the goose here yet, so we'll just wait for that. And then we'll talk about the nomination map. The Democratic map is coming, but Democrats are doing everything in their power to rig the primary against Robert Kennedy. So a lot of these states, their rules are not done yet, and we'll just have to wait. All right. So even with the Republicans, I think 5 contests, we don't. There's a lot we don't have firm dates, but we estimated dates. But 5 contests, we just have absolutely no information. We were able to obtain no information from anyone. So it just says TBD. And then all of the rules as we're done will be entered into the map. But I want to play something because this is our media for you folks. This is a major problem. This is a major problem in this country. It's a big reason why we're in the mess we're in. Because as I have told you, this is not a democratic system of government anymore. Whether you wanted to admit that to yourself or not, or you needed to take some time to see a couple former presidents and current frontrunners indicted, this is not a democratic system. This is what Jack Snyder would refer to as a cartelized system. What are other cartelized systems that we can compare it to? Oh, we're in good company. World War II, Japan. Nazi Germany, which later, the beginning of Nazi Germany, the Weimar so-called Republic was a cartelized system. We're in great company. Cartelized system is one in which powerful interest groups, okay, could basically collude with each other because they share peripheral interests. Even though they may not totally align together, their general agenda is a shared agenda. And it's one in which Jack Snyder, by the way, argues overexpansion is most likely. Overexpansion even to the point of collapse. Why? Because in cartelized systems, democratic systems in theory should be able to pull you back from the brink. That isn't really the case, but we have seen cartelized systems overexpand because there's too many damn people. There's too many chiefs and not enough Indians. So in order to course correct, it can't happen. So in this case, the media, the administrative state, interests on K Street and Wall Street and Silicon Valley, and this is a cartel. It isn't a real democratic system. It's hologram self-governance. It looks like it. There's the illusion you're self-governing yourself, but really try to reach out and touch it. Like, say, I don't know, elect a non-politician businessman to the presidency to take a wrecking ball to the government that you can't stand anymore, and you'll see that it's a hologram. It's not real. And the media has been a major problem in that. Let's watch this. Trump stops at a Cuban restaurant after pleading not guilty and is met with a crowd among which he is clearly beloved. Cubans, I think it's interesting, his choice of where to go. I think it's very clear. It's very smart. And it's also very smart how his lawyer reacted and the tone they took and who they are speaking to, considering the venue. Cubans know what time it is. They're not spoiled, privileged white people. Excuse me. Who went to Harvard and Yale. They've heard this bull story before. They've seen it happen before. They know what time it is. So let's go ahead and play this because take it to the end where Jake Tapper is. Let's watch.
For mishandling the most sensitive government documents that we have and for obstruction of justice, along with Walt Nauta, who is charged with intentionally setting up lies to the grand jury, to the FBI. Any way you look at this, and again, despite whatever may be going on in that restaurant, this case isn't going to be settled legally in a cafe.
Do I have to stop this for a second? Does it have to be said that like beta bitches are a major problem in this country for us right now? Does it have to be said that like men with low testosterone levels are a major problem for us in this country right now? This is the kid who didn't get picked for kickball and is super pissed off. I was watching Benny Johnson earlier while preparing for the show. He's totally right. These are miserable people who led miserable lives, even though they've been to Harvard and Yale and the rest of them. They're just horrible, miserable people. Look at Jake Tapper. Look at your stupid haircut, Jake. You look ridiculous. They're so mad. They're so angry that you haven't submitted yet. They're so pissed. They're so pissed. They just indicted a former president who's the leading frontrunner for the Republican nomination and is polling the strongest against the current president, his political opponent. And I'm, by the way, old enough to remember once upon a time it was an impeachable offense to go after your chief political rival, even if there's legitimate corruption. Because now we know there was. Now we know the FBI, in fact, sat quietly. The criminal organization that is known as the FBI sat back quietly while Donald Trump was impeached, even though they had those documents and the evidence to prove that, in fact, what Donald Trump wanted them to pursue was true. And yet Christopher Wray did not walk into the Oval Office and say, boss, here it is. You're right. Biden's a crook. We are literally prosecuting a war, bleeding a country white. Soon we're going to start plucking our own sons and daughters to go over there and help them. Damn right, you better believe it. That's going to happen. All to protect Joe Biden's bribery schemes, his extortion schemes, and his money laundering schemes. We are prosecuting a war because our president is a crook. We're in a bad place, folks. A really, really bad place. And look at these chumps. You know, let's get really serious. It's a serious offense. He's so angry he didn't get picked for kickball in gym class. And he's got to take it out on the rest of us. And look at Jake. Look at his face. Jake, remember when those emails that nobody was supposed to see showed that you are a total hack who takes direction from the DNC and the Clinton campaign, asking your producers, literally communicating back and forth with them, asking them, what do you want us to ask Trump and Cruz for our interview so we can trip them up on foreign policy? Send us over a couple ideas. You are a total stooge. And you need the full power of government with your allies to persecute your political enemies because you're a chump. Because in a real state of nature, you would never survive. Kurt Schlichter was totally right about that. I think it's very clear. It has become very clear to me.
It's going to be settled in the court based on the facts and law.
The folks in the control room, I don't need to see any more of that. He's trying to turn this in. He's trying to turn it into a spectacle, into a campaign ad. That's enough of that. We've seen it already. Let's go over again the 37 charges that Donald Trump is facing right now.
We don't have to go that he's facing. Throw it all up on the screen. Folks, I'm so over these people. I really am. They're the dirtiest, most crooked people in the world. I feel bad for Molly Hemingway because she's like a very rare gem. You know, I think if you really go back and look at her track record through the Trump era, you will see that she did her due diligence. She did not immediately dismiss the Russia collusion hoax, though she did what a journalist is supposed to do and look at it with skepticism. Over time, clearly converted into, oh my God, how could the Federal Bureau of Investigation be this corrupt? How could the Justice Department be this corrupt? And she's on this panel just shaking her head the other day. Like, what are you talking about? Who cares about these counts? The federal government can indict you on anything. They are not to be trusted after everything in the last 6-7 years. And the truth is, folks, here's the real truth. The truth is that this has been going on in our country for a very long time. You just haven't heard about it because everybody plays ball. This is the Hoover Model. He's been doing this he had been doing this to every president for years. FDR, if you don't play ball, I'm going to tell the country, I'm going to somehow make it available that your wife is a lesbian. I have surveillance of your wife with another woman. If you don't play ball, I'm going to tell the country Eleanor is a lesbian. Before Donald Trump, there was only one person who didn't play ball. He decided, I don't think we should keep these secrets. I know we're in a Cold War, but I kind of feel like the Russians and us should share some of this so we don't wind up annihilating the world. It's the end of him. And then it's on and on and on. We've been going through this. There did appear to be a break in the 80s for a little bit. I don't know if that was Reagan just getting things under control or a different breed, but it didn't end. And then very clearly, Mueller brought that back as quick as he could. His predecessor, they all did. Jim Comey was an acolyte of Robert Mueller, Bob Mueller, who used one of the worst moments in our nation's history to grab as much power for himself and his agency as he possibly could. And even though we granted them all those powers, they haven't stopped a single terror attack using them. Not one. Despite knowing a whole host of things that could have prevented stuff. They're too busy spying on politicians and your would-be leaders to try to blackmail them because that's what they do. Why do you think Joe Biden is not indicted as well? Because Joe plays ball. Hillary plays ball. That and they're all in the club. And Trump is not in the club. The Tsarnaev brothers. Those big bad Russians gave us that intel on a silver platter. The FBI was too busy investigating political opposition to deal with it and investigate it. And unfortunately, those pressure cookers went off at the Boston Marathon bombing. They knew all about Hillary Clinton's supporter who shot up the Pulse nightclub. They did nothing about it. And his father, they did nothing about it. San Bernardino, right through the cracks. Too busy climbing up the telephone pole outside of Trump Tower to eavesdrop on Donald Trump. I think this guy's going to run for president. Let's make the dossier. Get the folder. Anyway, cartelized system. All right, so with that in mind, he goes out there and he has this like love fest. They start singing him happy birthday. And then, of course, he gives the speech at Bedminster and he says something during that speech in Bedminster. He says a couple of things that got me thinking, because this is, and I'm going to roll into this actually right now, because we're going to have John O'Shea come on as well. And he's going to talk about some stuff that's going on in Texas, which I think is all very parallel. I really do. Something important happened yesterday in that situation. We're going to have him back on and talk more about some other things, but because of what happened yesterday, I wanted to bring him on to talk today. And he wrote also a great article. That's what I want to talk. I want some time later to talk to him about that in more detail. But it got me thinking about what Robert and I were discussing on Monday that nobody's talking about. Why are these younger non-white voters, despite everything that's happening, the more they indict the man, the more he just gets stronger with them? There's not any indication whatsoever of deterioration nationally in support for Donald Trump. Nothing. And since we came out with ours at the end of May, there's been 10 national polls that have all affirmed what we saw, which is 1, Donald Trump performed stronger against Joe Biden than Ron DeSantis. And anyone. 2, this is coming from non-whites. Much of it is from non-whites, younger voters, and those who make income levels, those who are at income levels that typically have been a stubbornly Democratic vote for years. Robert said it was the last gasp of the Democratic working class. And in truth, it looks right. The only thing I'd add to that is it's more non-white. So yesterday, before I bring on John, I see him getting himself situated. I want to read this to you because it's not on the, I'll put it on a graphic when it's fully done. Yesterday, I snuck 2 things on a questionnaire. And I knew we were definitely going to hit a lot of non-white younger people. So among non-white, 18 to 29 years old, we said, agree or disagree, okay, with us. They hate Trump as much as they hate me. 18 to 29, non-white, 64% agreed. This is another one. They hate Trump because he cares about people like me. 71%. Among whites, much lower. Much lower. That is a major catastrophe for the Democratic Party. However, those people will never support another Republican. Never. Never. And in fact, I'm telling you, DeSantis, Robert says it's done. You're just wasting your time. He's never going to be president. You at least tell your surrogates and your influencers to shut up. They're killing you. Killing you. Every day they cheerlead for a Trump indictment. Every day they try to smear some person that the right has affected for. Every day they say something stupid. Every day they say something even more stupid. Just tell them to shut up. They're killing you. When you have crooked cops on the payroll just out there smearing everybody all day, you look like a schmuck. You look like a schmuck. When you have, because I know who this is in Politica. I'm not going to blow him up, but I'll tell you right now, I think most of my audience can guess who this is. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Let me grab the screen share and put this up. They're killing you, man. They're killing you. An operative in Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' orbit, by the way, works for a certain super PAC. Oops. Who requested anonymity to speak candidly without approval from higher-ups, said that, quote, from an objective standpoint, unquote, the federal charges Trump faces for his post-presidency handling of classified documents are far more serious than the earlier ones around hush money payments before the 2016 election. This person is not a lawyer. I don't know what's going to happen in Georgia. This person said, oh, shut up. Stop being dishonest, because you in fact do know what's going to happen. You've all been at this for months. This has been your plan. But you're not supposed to go to NBC News. Excuse me, this is NBC News. You're not supposed to go to NBC News and tell people about it. You're killing this guy. You're destroying this guy's career because you want money and because you want attention and because you want to try to remain relevant. But the man is going to prison. It's happening. So at this point, where we are is who's going to be the nominee. Donald Trump broke the law. And frankly, I'm not a never Trumper. You are now. I'm really not. But this is too much. This is the biggest dishonest load of bullcrap. I know who this is. Or at least I'm 95% sure I know who this person is. And they are totally full of crap. I have told you guys the truth from the beginning. This has always been their plan. This is what Vivek said yesterday. He is 100% true. He was telling you the truth. Donors are calling and telling all of the candidates to stay out of this. Do not go and support the president. Let him go to prison. Why? Because they're not thinking about it as if this is some big question for the future of the country and the implications that this has for the country. They don't give a rat's ass about that. They gave this man $500 million. Or going to give him $500 million to spend to try to beat Trump in the primary. This is insurance. That's the kind of people we're talking about here. So you're killing this guy. You're killing him. And you know what? He's a grown-ass man. It's his own fault. Robert is right. It's very safe to conclude he will never be president. Even if Trump is taken out, he will never be president because look at all these polls. Do you know what they're saying? I'm not voting for him. I'm not going to vote for the replacement. I'm not doing it. I'm wise to it. Morning Consult, which just came out the other day. By the way, that poll in California from Spencer at Emerson College, which I knew was coming. I told you. It was incredibly damning and goes to the point. And by the way, I'm going to write an article about this and it's going to pop up somewhere. Just telling you right now. But look at what Spencer is trying to say. These voters, Trump's base continues to be voters under 45, non-white. And while he's winning the other groups, he's just not winning them as dominant. Those voters, especially the younger voters, will never vote for anyone else. Mike Pence, Ron DeSantis, they're not going to do it. They'll just stay home. All right. So let me bring on John O'Shea. And when we're done, I'm going to actually show you how things have changed. Now, where we are, this didn't happen overnight. This was happening. And I think that these indictments made him, I think Robert's right. It's like the man's out to get him. Like the man's out to get me all the time. I think there's validity to that argument. John, welcome to Inside the Numbers. Thanks for joining.
How are you?
Oh, living the dream, John, as always, right?
Yeah, pretty another much, day, another fight.
Tell you what, this is close to a national nightmare. Now we have the leaders of narco states who have been the targets themselves of this kind of persecution, talking about us like it's just disgusting because we're off our high horse now. We've really lost the moral high ground. Jack Posobiec said yesterday when I was on his show, if this was any other country, John, everybody would openly be calling this what this is. This is a political persecution of the main political opposition to stop him from uncovering their corruption. or not even uncovering it. I mean, a lot of it's being uncovered regardless, but making them pay for it. And this is a failed regime because they are. We're a failing country, John. I mean, I'm sure that's why you agree. That's why you're running for Congress. If you thought everything was on the up and up, you wouldn't be running for the office you're running for. So they were just in really bad shape, and the regime is fighting very hard to keep the status quo, which is, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, the status quo is the end. It's the end of the line for us. So it's just a really sad ass situation. So, pardon my French, but
No.
I wanted to bring you on to talk about this and other things. So Parker County yesterday voted to basically denounce, right? I mean, that's what they did. They voted to denounce the impeachment of Ken Paxton, Attorney General Ken Paxton. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Update us on what's going on there?
Sure. Well, as people know, Ken is a beloved attorney general. And in the article that I sent you, I drew the parallels between what's happening with President Trump and with Ken Paxton.
Yeah.
It seems that if you're a national populist and an America First person, you are squarely in the crosshairs. And I agree. I don't think it's coincidental that these things are happening now, as they're mounds of evidence of corruption and just, frankly, treason. I mean, I don't know any other word to call it. If you sell out your country to foreign powers while holding office, I don't know any other definition.
Yeah.
And it's so transparent. I mean, we've said multiple times on this, and it's hard for people to stay up with the news, especially when the news is so corrupted. I mean, the fact that we don't have fair and unbiased journalism right now, except for shows like yours, like Jack Posobiec's, like Steve Bannon War Room, One America Voice, Real America Voice, those things, they actually try to get to objective journalism. The rest of it, including Fox, they're all either controlled opposition, or they should be like-kind contributions to the Democratic National Committee. I mean, it's just staggering. From Ukraine to this faux impeachment to what's happening with Ken. I mean, I read the news, and in situations where I have personal knowledge, they just flat lie. I don't know any other thing to say. So, the American people are finally getting such a heavy dose of reality because the corrupt uniparty establishment is just doubling down and doubling down. And the only good news that I have, as dark as it looks, and I agreed with your opening statement, is that the pressure is ratcheting up because they feel it crumbling under them. I think we really have a chance. We go one of two ways: full-on Marxism, authoritarianism, or we truly get back to what our founding fathers want. We get back to a constitutional republic where we recognize that it is a compact between we the people, who grant some power to the federal government because they ensure our God-given rights, not our government-given rights, our God-given rights.
I got to read something from your article because, before you even get into comparing it and contrasting it with what's going on with Attorney General Paxton.
Right.
This is let me just read it. Contrast the FBI's Mar-a-Lago raid on President Trump's personal records with that of President Biden's classified documents that he even had just laying in his garage and in his Corvette. And then I have to just stop. I'm John. And in his Corvette. And he's like, oh, well, it was locked. The garage was locked. I mean, this is the bottom line is he's one of them. Trump is not. The special prosecutors were appointed at the same time, and yet they're full steam ahead. And they let Pence off as well. So because he's one of them, they're full steam ahead. Actually, had Pence not betrayed the people that he made that plan with at the end before January 6th, this wouldn't have happened. He would be indicted as well. But because he sold out and told the Koch brothers, I'll take your money and become an anti-Trumper, or not the Koch brothers, the Koch family, he's going to get away with it because now he's part of the club again and he's protected. But, he's just laying in his garage, even though he had no authorization to have them as a senator and then vice president. Ken, I'm watching Mike Davis on Twitter yesterday. And John, I'm watching Mike Davis on Twitter yesterday, and he's laying out the laws. This is the Presidential Records Act. This is the Espionage Act. This, and this. And all of these so-called legal experts and foreign policy experts, right? And the same foreign policy experts who got us in every single stupid war in the last, 40 years. they're not really responding to Mike's legal argument about why none of this matters. It doesn't matter what Trump says to the reporter. It doesn't matter what he said to his lawyer. He is the executive, and he has the sole power of declassification, or what is and what is not a secret. Understand it like this, folks. The president is the one you elect, and they get to say what is hidden from you and what isn't. There are very clearly records that they didn't want Trump to have in his possession, records that are obviously incriminating to them, and they wanted them back. And that's, I mean, and this is where this comes from. So Mike's explaining this. It doesn't matter. No Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Justice Department, nobody can tell Trump what is and what isn't supposed to be a secret to the country, what he can have in his possession, what he can't. We've been through this with the Clinton, right? And there's an article in the Wall
the
Street
sock
Journal.
drawer. Yeah.
Yeah, the sock drawer. How? Because you and I are old enough to remember this stuff. A lot of people aren't. And all they're replying with, John, they're not replying with legal arguments. It's just, he should die in prison. He should. I mean, this is, an epoch where we're becoming really cruel to each other, and human beings are really capable of doing absolutely horrible things to people they label the other, or who's not like them or whatever. I mean, the 20th century was millions of people died over stuff like this. Democide was the leading cause of human unnatural death in the 20th century. And democide, for folks who don't know, is death by government. They killed their own citizens, lots of them. And we've had this false sense of security for a really long time. And if this isn't the time, if these events don't show you that not only are we in, that security is gone, but we are, in fact, living side by side, like Newt Gingrich said, with people who absolutely hate us and want harm to come to us. They want a man who led the country, who was elected by the country, to spend the rest of his life in a federal prison. This is crazy, John. Crazy. All because you're scared.
I agree. And frankly, I mean, you just said a lot. So first of all, about Parker County. Parker County actually passed a resolution condemning the sham impeachment of Ken Paxton. And in fact, we have an emergency meeting in the Tarrant County Republican GOP later this week that's going to vote and pass a similar resolution as well.
Interesting.
People are seeing it. Now, interestingly enough, there's been word that I can't confirm, but behind the scenes that there's been some people in party leadership that have been trying to squash this effort. It's actually been led by the precinct chairs in a grassroots basis. And we've had over a third of them, including myself, sign on to the actual resolution. So I think they're finding it difficult to control this herd of angry cats. But and it's happening all throughout Texas. And Tarrant County is important because we're the largest red county in the country, let alone the state. But, to get back to your point about the othering of us, as you mentioned, the democide issue, I think it's interesting to note that all of those regimes were all leftist, Marxist, authoritarian regimes. And it's shocking to me that there is a wing of our country, an element of our country, that actually thinks that that's a good solution. The absolute hubris of these people to say, well, they haven't done it the way I'm going to do it. I'll be different. Power corrupts, but not me. I'm different. I actually have noble intentions. And that's I think that there are people who genuinely feel that way, but clearly the people at the top, they're just using it as a power grab, plain and simple, by any means necessary. And the thing of it is, Jack Smith's 37 indictments, the one thing that isn't mentioned in all that claptrap, the Presidential Record Act. And as you rightly point out, it is the commander in chief who decides what is classified and what is unclassified. By him merely mentioning something, it now becomes unclassified. The National Archivists aren't like the purveyor of what gets classified or not. They don't have power over what's presidential record and what's personal record. It's just pablum. And they know this because we've been through this. When Barack Obama said on an open mic telling Russia that after the election, he'll have more latitude to negotiate with them, that wasn't treasonous. That wasn't some breach of confidential information. He uttered it. Therefore, it was unclassified. When Barack Obama backed up 14 tractor trailers worth of material and drove them off to a warehouse out in Chicago, that was well within his purview. It's not. It's been established. And the only thing about this that I think is dangerous, not that they're going to get him. I mean, clearly, a court may find, and it might have to get appealed up, but it's the precedents that this is setting.
Yeah.
And like you said, the people are seeing, and it's like I wrote this, and it really pained me to write this in the article title, but we are becoming a banana republic. I have friends from South America who are writing me saying how shocked they are that this is even possible in a country like the United States.
Yeah. I got a friend, he just was recently naturalized a few years ago from Cuba, and is like, this is not good. This is, and by the way, that's a split household. So, a lot of them, and he's in Florida, a lot of Cubans obviously are majority for Trump and majority, well, I wouldn't even say Republican. They are majority for Trump. But this is not exactly like a pro-Trump household. It's just that they understand and they know what this is. And, it terrifies them. And Michael Bekesha in the Wall Street Journal, because you just said it. I want to read this real quick. It's very, you raised a lot of similar points just a second ago. Although the indictment against Donald Trump doesn't cite the Presidential Records Act, the charges are predicated on the law, right? So it's twist into the Espionage Act is crazy.
Right.
The indictment came about only because the government thought Mr. Trump took records that didn't belong to him, and the government raided his house to find any such records. This should never have happened. The Presidential Records Act allows the president to decide what records to return and what records to keep at the end of his presidency. And the National Archives and Records Administration can't do anything about it. I know because I'm the lawyer who lost the Clinton sock draw case. And we don't have to get into the history of it, but this is him. That's Bekesha. I mean, this is the precedent. It will obviously, I think you're right. This is going to have to go to the Supreme Court. But what do you make of the DeSantis people cheerleading? Let's be honest, call it what it is now. Enough is enough. What do you make of these people cheerleading for Trump to go to prison? And, if people didn't think I was telling the truth before, there you have it right there in NBC News. Obviously, I was telling the truth. But, if you needed any more information, they need him to go to prison. The Texas strategy is not going to work. You're from Texas. He's going to win it. It's a hybrid primary state, but not if he crushes it as much as he's crushing it right now. He will take damn near every delegate. In California, same thing. If he is at or above 50% in the most recent polls. That means their little congressional district strategy doesn't work, John. So What do you make of somebody, a so-called Republican, banking his whole political strategy on another Republican, the former president, going to prison?
Well, it's funny. I made this comment earlier when I was speaking with Alan West. And, the real problem that we have today aren't necessarily the Democrats. They tell you who they are, and then they act accordingly. It is these faux Republicans who continuously stab us in the back. I mean, going from Bill Barr, who knew about, the election fraud and the integrity issues, and then, made the statements that he made, to, the fact that the Department of Justice under Bill Barr knew that there were payments that were received by Hunter Biden. In fact, I just heard
incredible, John.
Yeah, I just heard Giuliani say that he met with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and he actually had, as a witness who was seeking the federal protection program, a woman in the finance department from Burisma who was in charge of the overseas wires. And she had, just as the tip of the iceberg, a $14 million money launderer that was sent overseas, of which $3 million ended up with the Bidens, of which $900,000 went personally to Joe Biden. And now that Comer's unearthing all this, I think you're right. I think they're in their death throes because they're scared to death now. It's not just going to be the Democrats and their accomplices. It's going to be the people who were compromised and either willfully or blissfully just looked the other way and let this occur without calling it out. And in fact, in the Ken situation is another perfect example of the parallels here. We've had Ken under indictment now since 2015, and it's been sitting at the Criminal Court of Appeals, all Republican justices, and they've been sitting on it so they can continue to besmirch him and say he's under indictment. They know there's no there. And then all of a sudden we find out that Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice and the FBI have been looking into Ken because of his supposed dealings with Austin developer and real estate mogul Nate Paul. Because
I was going
they
to read
raided
that.
Nate Paul's house in 2019. They start looking into Ken and his involvement because he appointed an independent counsel. He's admitted that, hey, look, I received a campaign contribution from this guy, but he's brought up charges that his constitutional rights have been infringed upon by the FBI. Therefore, I'll appoint an independent counsel to investigate and report back to Williamson County. Not that he was going to take any action on it, but just look into it. Well, lo and behold, the Speaker of the House, Dade Phelan, a supposed Republican, the guy who the last time I was on, we showed minutes and minutes of him speaking and presiding from the House floor while intoxicated. All of a sudden, his special investigators unearthed evidence that the FBI and the Department of Justice weren't able to evidence. And it all happened behind closed doors without witnesses being under oath. And then on the House floor, we're just not told the evidence. We're just told we have to trust them. And through a rush sham impeachment, they get that done. And then if there's any just doubt in your mind that Dade Phelan, a Republican from Beaumont, Texas, supposedly wasn't in coordination with the Department of Justice, it turns out that his special investigators from Houston all had ties to the Department of Justice. And then a week and a half after Ken is impeached in the House, all of a sudden Nate Paul, 4 years after the initial FBI raids, gets criminally charged and arrested.
I mean, you just went through 4 paragraphs in summarizing it like perfectly. But let me just read that for the first one for people because so you can get a better idea. So in 2020, the FBI opened again. Ken Paxton has been like having this over his head since 15. There's been numerous attempts, to get in liberal areas, by the way, in liberal venues that did not succeed. But then in 2020, the FBI opened an investigation into Ken under the auspice that he had improperly used his office to aid Austin real estate investor Nate Paul, who gave him a $25,000 campaign contribution. All right. So, folks, Ken Paxton is an $8 million campaign. A $25,000 contribution does not
move the needle.
It's not going to, he's not going to move heaven and earth and abuse the power of his office for $25,000 out of $8 million. It's just, that's not how it works. The allegations were, unless, that would be incredibly stupid. I mean, it would never, and people don't do that.
And he's not stupid.
No, he is not a stupid man. The matter involved Ken seeking an independent counsel to look into the claim, the allegations were either from whistleblowers inside the office or disgruntled employees who were subsequently fired for cause, depending on which side of the issue one took. The matter involved Ken seeking an independent counsel to look into the claim that the FBI had illegally violated Paul's constitutional rights in 2019 when they raided his home and offices. The investigation continued to simmer in the public eye with numerous salacious claims, 3 of the dismissed employees filing suit against Ken and the Attorney General's office, hiring an outside law firm to provide an independent report on the matter. While all of this was occurring, the state bar also tried to have Paxton disbarred for his petition to the Supreme Court of the 2020 elections, given that several key battleground states violated the Constitution by not following their own election laws. And what Ken was saying with that issue, that lawsuit, was these other states that basically put a moratorium on their own laws. I mean, that's what they did. They said, well, COVID, we need to not follow our own laws because, folks, that is what happened. He said by doing that, these other states disenfranchised Texas voters. And because Texas did, prosecute their election according to the law. And that's where that came from. If you are a lawyer, doesn't matter whether you're attorney general, folks, if you're a lawyer of any kind that was involved in 2020 election cases, and you are on the Republican side, and you were, looking into anomalies or arguing that, Wisconsin screwed us because they didn't follow their own laws with indefinitely confined status. Nevada screwed us because they did not follow their ban against ballot harvesting, right? So on and on and on. Right. If you did anything like that, you're public enemy number one. I mean, you have the bars coming after you, trying to take away your license.
The state bar coming after the attorney general because he filed a writ for the to the Supreme Court. I mean, it's just absurd. It reminds me of all these medical licensing boards that are going after doctors because they were actually prescribing people ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Forget the fact that the patient actually did well and didn't end up having to be hospitalized. You didn't follow our packaged narrative, and so therefore we're going to have to come after you.
Yeah, a big pharma scam. I mean, that's it's unbelievable. What are we going to do, John? I mean, you get elected, you get in there. What are we going to do about this FBI? Because it is not just, and the Justice Department altogether, it's not just Donald Trump, Ken Paxton. Look at what they did to Kyle Rittenhouse. They had that footage, and I know I did voir dire for the case. They had that footage and did not, which was exculpatory. This repeatedly hiding exculpatory evidence is totally out of control. You have one side of the aisle. I think that's Mike Pence, Ron DeSantis. Oh, in my administration, it's not going to happen. I'm gonna purge everybody and I'm gonna reform it. And then you have Donald Trump all by himself, who, for those who don't know, wants to take a sledgehammer to these federal law enforcement agencies that really, in my opinion, have outlived their mission. Like John Dillinger is not running around anymore robbing banks. Babyface Nelson is not running around shooting innocent people and robbing banks. That the mission of the FBI, John, is over. They don't stop terror attacks. All they do is act as the administrative state's secret police force.
The Gestapo, actually.
The Gestapo. How do you reform that, John?
Well, I know this is going to put a big, giant crosshair on my back as if it wasn't already there, but man, it needs to be torn down. We've just shown this kind of concentration of power just absolutely corrupts. And it's plain as day for everybody to see. Back to your point about the people, kind of viewing Trump as standing up and fighting for them. That's 100% true. People right now are seeing their civil liberties just eroded left and right. And they're saying, if they can do this to him, what's to prevent them from doing that to us? It reminds me of the line in Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises, where the guy's asked, well, how did you go bankrupt? And he said, 2 ways, gradually, then suddenly. And that's what's happened to us. We were the frogs in the boiling pot. They just kind of cranked up the simmer just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit. And then just like Saul Alinsky, his playbook, never let a good crisis go to waste. And so then when COVID happened, boom, then they dropped the hammer. And they were surprised that people didn't just acquiesce, that there was that level of resistance. But don't think that for a second that they're not going to try this again. So as far as what do I think about the FBI, I think they are morally bankrupt and corrupt. And I think that they need to be torn down. I think it needs to be reconstituted, and I think it needs to be dispersed throughout the country. I don't think they need a new headquarters building that rivals that of the Pentagon. And I think the people who are currently in charge ought to be facing indictment. And again, it puts a crosshair on my back, but a quote that I try and live by, Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, "Silence in the face of evil is in itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak, not to act is to act." And it's time we start living that way.
John, what you said is actually, maybe there will be people who think that's like, rash and whatnot. But the truth is Roosevelt, Nixon, many of our presidents in the 20th century thought the FBI was totally out of control and had to go. Hoover's blackmail operation kept them not only alive and well, but constantly growing and ever gaining in more power. FDR's got a problem with me. I'll just slam the file on the folder and threaten to tell the country that Eleanor is a lesbian. This is what they did. And Martin Luther King, I got a problem with Martin Luther King. I'm going to send his wife tapes of him having an affair. Like, I'm not, again, condoning Martin Luther King having an affair, but that's that man's business. Who the hell does the FBI think they are to do something like, all because Hoover didn't want him to accept an award? John, an award he didn't think that he was entitled to.
The ends that these people will go to is nothing short of shocking. You brought up earlier in the show the fact that we're facing World War III right now because obviously Biden is trying to cover up, and the powers that be are trying to cover up his complete treason and sellout to Ukraine. This whole narrative that Russia is some evil empire. Well, yeah, they hate Russia because Putin prevented Russia from going the route of Ukraine. It was on the verge of it, but Putin pulled them up and actually made them strong. And this whole false narrative that Russia is nothing but a giant gas station with some grain fields growing in it is being proven right before our very eyes as this promised spring offensive is now 8 days into it. And they've just done nothing but grind down additional Ukrainian people. And the fact that we're willing to let Ukraine suffer and bleed like that so that we can try and attack our quote unquote enemy in Russia is just unconscionable. And it's not just that they let it happen, it's that they continue to escalate. First, it was going to be Stingers and Javelins, and then it was going to be, this weapon system, then the Patriot, now mainline battle tanks, then now it's going to be F-16s. And what we're showing is that Russia is actually a superpower again, that the whole combined forces of the West are not able to match the munitions and military hardware that Russia is unilaterally producing on their own. And so, when I had lunch with Kay Granger and I told her, that I was running against her, one of the things that came up was this whole, Russia-Ukraine situation. And I told her, I said, look, I'm afraid we've just proven Russia is actually stronger than we thought. And she said, oh, I don't believe that. I don't think that Putin's doing that at all. Well, look.
Kay,
it's
in
happening.
The first 3 days of your offensive, 20% of the Bradley fighting vehicles you just sent for that offensive have been obliterated within 3 days.
20 to 30% of those Leopard 2 tanks too. It's just, and so what's going to be next? Next, we're going to send in Polish troops. We're going to sign, mutual defense agreements. And then it's how much longer until the U.S. is sending forces over there? And then just pray that it doesn't bleed outside of Ukraine and escalate into an entire world war. Again, with one of the world's largest nuclear superpowers, and all basically to protect the Biden family and their corruption. I mean, this is just insanity. It just needs to be pulled out into the light of reality, and we just need to have our heads checked. We cannot enter into a world war to protect the Biden crime family. It's just insanity.
Can you imagine that, John, if that really happens? Because I am not dismissive of where this all could end up. We're marching towards a great power conflict, and one we have not had in 80 years. It will be incredibly deadly. And it's all, and Putin said this in the beginning, but Western media never covers anything he says. You really have to do your own diligence. And he said that they're going to start a world war to protect Biden's corruption, to protect the fact that Biden, first of all, the sins the U.S., he said, the sins the U.S. have committed in Ukraine when Russia takes over some of these facilities are going to be exposed. That's number one. And number two, that basically Biden was bribed to build up their energy industry. And it was really all there, John. And this is the thing that pisses me off. Like, you could go to the State Department website and you could read the speech he gave in 2014 and then, put it all together. This was all really there. And now we know from the stenographer, the White House stenographer, that Jake Sullivan, Barack Obama, they knew all about it. And Jake Sullivan is now the national security advisor. So we have a crook as a president, a crook as a national security advisor. Our defense secretary doesn't believe in civilian control over the military. And our top diplomat doesn't believe in diplomacy. This is nuts where we're at. This is nuts. It's terrifying, man. It really is. So I gotta, basically ask you something here. I don't know if you're familiar with one of the lawyers that appears to be going after Ken for this, but he's not like a right-wing bomb thrower. And somebody had sent me a video and it asked me, well, what do you think about the fact that they really found like a Republican, to go after him? And these guys, they were doing what you said, though. Just take our word for it. It's all in these suits. It's in these settlements. You don't know everything. What do you make of that? Because I hate that. Just so then show it to me. Show it to me. I can't stand that at all.
At this day and age right now, if you're not going to be transparent and you're not going to provide just full disclosure, I'm just not going to believe you. I've seen it time and time again, and I don't care what letter you have behind your name, because we've seen there's way too many Republicans who are not really Republicans. And if they are Republican, they're not conservatives, and they're more than willing to eat their own. That's the crazy thing about our party, is that we're too busy fighting ourselves to actually concentrate an effort and push back on the Democrat agenda. And so it doesn't surprise me, but it doesn't persuade me in one least bit.
Yeah, this is why I tell people all the time, because, how do you make a Republican? It's really simple. You just bake 1/3 coward, 1/3 crook, and the another third stupid. Because you have somebody like Chris Christie, who was the target of this kind of lawfare himself over Bridgegate.
Right.
And by the way, Donald Trump stood by him, right? And now this happens, and look at where he goes with it. I mean, Mike Pence, it's disgusting. His response, which I see him trying to walk back now, is just absolutely disgusting. And they're putting ambition before the bigger picture,
Yeah.
and this is what
Well, moral cowardice too.
Yeah. Look, right. It's a lot of that is cowardice. Nobody wants to be the next one.
Please,
You know what I
please
mean?
don't beat me. Right.
Yeah. So right, exactly. Yeah. So I guess I wanted you to come back if you can in like a day or so. Because there's
Sure.
something totally different. I did want to talk to you, but tell people where they can find you and follow what you're doing and the website and all that.
Yeah. So if you want a true America First congressman who actually will have the back of President Trump when he is reelected, because he will be reelected. And frankly, to your earlier question about DeSantis, I find it disgusting that they're being opportunistic rather than rallying around the truth. But I am your guy. I am not a career politician. I'm an outsider, similar to President Trump, who only looks to serve his country and see that the power is returned to the hands of we the people and that our constitutional rights, God-given rights, are restored. So please go to www.o'shaefortexas.com. I'm in a race right now with a 14-term incumbent, so you can imagine what that uphill battle is like. But God has provided a path, and he has made me for a time such as this, because frankly, I don't care what they say about me. I don't care what they do to me. What I care about is that truth prevails, and that the country that I leave behind to the kids, my kids and grandkids, is the one that I grew up in and knew and enjoyed. And then when I go to meet my maker, I hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant."
Sorry, I muted myself. Amen to that. Come back and see us again real soon, John. I appreciate you stopping by. All the best to you.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you having me on. All my love to Laura.
And right back at you as always. John O'Shea, folks, 12th Congressional District, Texas, running against Katie Granger, who is like, he's too nice of a guy to say it, but I will. Running against an 80-year-old permanent fixture in Washington. You hear about the encounter? He said when he had lunch with her to tell her. And by the way, that was courteous. That was the right thing to do. Most people were telling him, "Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't give her the don't sit down and talk with her." He's a good human being, a good human being. Listen, I'm going to run against you, and I thought you should hear it from me. That's what men used to do, or decent people in general. That's the courtesy used to extend to people if you were a decent human being. And talking about that issue with Ukraine, see, she just keep sending that money over there. It doesn't matter what happens. Doesn't matter, how many people, how many young boys have to die. Even though at this point, everybody knows. They walked into that skiff last week. Everybody knows that what this is about in Ukraine. And frankly, any Republican supporting the Biden crime families, a war to protect the Biden crime family and their interests is a disgrace, a national disgrace. They wouldn't do it for you. You think Democrats would do it for a Republican president? You think if Donald Trump was instrumental, including taking bribes from a foreign power, in developing Ukraine's energy sector, and then he decided to use the might of the American military, the taxpayers, resources, lethal, humanitarian aid, whatever it may be, and got us dangerously close to a great power conflict, all to protect his own personal family's financial interests. Do you think Democrats would go along with that? You think a single Democratic lawmaker would go along with that? Or would they be clamming for another impeachment? And by the way, folks, think about it, marinate on this for a second. When they were impeaching Donald Trump over the phone call with Zelensky, the FBI had all these documents. They had all knowledge of all of this. Incredible. Julian, I don't know how you reform that. It's not It's just simply not possible, right? And yeah, I did see the Florida poll that shows it's now tied at 41. It is not tied. I'm sorry. Where are the crosstabs? Where are everything else? Did you plot every single interview on a map like I did so you could go through? Nobody is more transparent than me. By the way, that poll was DeSantis plus 45 in their prior poll. 45. Does anybody seriously believe that Ron DeSantis was ahead of Donald Trump in Florida by 45 points? So I'm wrong. Emerson's wrong. Everybody's wrong except for them. Okay, sure. So, I mean, that's if you want me to. I saw a couple of people say, hey, you got to mention something about this. I'm quite confident I am correct. All right. I'm not going to even spend that much time on it. When they do what I do and they have the record and amass the record that I have, then I'll take it more seriously. But nobody was ahead by 45 points in the state of Florida. That will be 20-point margin, 10-point margin, 20-point, 25, something like that. But 45 is just ludicrous. It shows you, obviously. By the way, when it was DeSantis plus 45, Emerson was Trump plus 3 in Florida. So you can't reconcile those differences. All right, so let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to finish reading that Wall Street Journal article, but then I want to show you this shift. I'm going to use 2 very diverse states. By the way, Florida is one of them. I'm going to use 2 very diverse states to show you this is younger people, yes, but it's not white. It's not white. So when I come out and I show you 18 to 24-year-olds are damn near tied right now with Joe Biden, the YouGov data set is tied and has been for 2 months. Morning Consult, basically very close. This is a shift among these younger non-white votes, and it's only going for Trump. It is not going to anybody else. And I'm going to even, in fact, I can show you that even DeSantis' big win in Florida in 2022, that was all done on the back of older voters. He still did not perform as well with younger voters that, by the way, were many of whom were missing from the electorate. All right. So in the poll, which I've just been so busy, but I'll tell you right now, like I told you on Monday, it was Trump plus 11, DeSantis plus 8, both very comfortably winning the state. However, Trump literally led every single age group, every single one. And DeSantis didn't. He led with voters over 40. And he led with them more than Trump led with voters over 40. But it wasn't so much more. 32% of the electorate could be 65 plus, but it wasn't so much more that it led to a closing of the gap, between the difference in Trump and his performance. All right. But like I said, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll do that. First we'll finish the article and then we'll do that. All right. So let's bang them both out. Yeah, sure. Why not? All right. Look, folks, authorities fear extremists are targeting the U.S. power grid. And that's according to Time magazine. If just 9 key substations were to go down, it would knock out power across the country for up to 18 months. Your life, our lives, most of our lives would be frozen in time at the moment the power went out. That's why you need a solar generator. The new Patriot Power Generator 2000X is portable, but it's powerful enough for your phones, medical devices, even your refrigerator. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com and get one for 10% off using the promo code TPP10 at checkout. This code is for your first purchase only, but go to 4patriots.com, use the promo code TPP10 to get your Patriot Power Generator today. And before we come back from a break, I just want to tell you about a great deal from our friends at Jam and Bean, Patriot-owned Michigan Patriots, but also incredibly gifted and talented coffee roasters. And right now, if you go to Jam and Bean, JAMN, bean.com, sign up for a new subscription, whether it's K-Cups or freshly beautiful, the aroma of freshly roasted, imported quality beans. Doesn't matter which one. Get a new subscription, use the promo code TPP40 at checkout, and that'll knock 40% off right off the bat on your new subscription. Plus, you will still get 10% off every month when you renew. All right. So again, Jam and Bean is JAMN as in Nancy, bean.com. PunditPM.com. Use the promo code TPP40. Did you guys check out the Michigan maple syrup yet? To be honest, until I tried it, I really was not familiar with Michigan maple syrup. We all know about Vermont, right? And that is golden. And I thought because it was like lighter, maybe the depth of flavor isn't as much. And it's delicious, making me love pancakes all over again. And I don't know why I got on this like kick with pancakes. I just stopped liking them. And then I kid you not, I got those. I got that. And then obviously I tried it separately on the show first. But then later had it with pancakes. It was so good. And now I'm back on the pancake train. All right, kids are busting my chops to take them to IHOP or something. But all right, jamandbean.com, promo code TPP40. All right, let's get back up this article. I want to finish reading this because, again, this is Michael Bekesha, and he says the raid in Mar-a-Lago should never have happened. The Presidential Records Act allows the president to decide. There you go. To decide what records to return and what records to keep at the end of his presidency. And the National Archives and Records Administration can't do anything about it. I know because I'm the lawyer who lost the Clinton sock drawer case. And by the way, Alan Dershowitz also brought this up in his analysis, in which he concluded that this does not even come to the bar of Richard Nixon. This is that week. In 2009, historian Taylor Branch published The Clinton Tapes, Wrestling History with the President. The book is based on recordings of Mr. Branch's 79 meetings with Bill Clinton between January 20th, 1993 and January 20th, 2001. According to Mr. Branch, the audio tapes preserved not only Mr. Clinton's thoughts on issues he faced while president, but also some actual events, such as phone conversations. Among them, and Robert brought this up on Monday as well, and it's John Dean, the hack that he is, actually cited this, not realizing the hypocrisy and contradiction. But look, folks, that's what shills do. They don't care about contradiction, hypocrisy. Nothing about that matters to them, including Mr. Clinton calling several U.S. senators and trying to persuade them to vote against an amendment by Senator John McCain requiring the immediate withdrawal of troops from Somalia. Mr. Clinton's side of a phone call with Representative William Natcher, then Democrat Kentucky, in which the president explained that his reasoning for joining the North American Free Trade Agreement was based on technical forecasts in his presidential briefings. Mr. Clinton's side of a phone conversation with Secretary of State Warren Christopher about a diplomatic impasse over Bosnia. Mr. Clinton seeking advice from Mr. Branch on pending foreign policy decisions, such as military involvement in Haiti and possibly easing the embargo of Cuba. The White House made the audio tapes. Nancy Enrique, then director of Oval Office Operations, set up the meetings between messengers, Clinton and Branch, and was involved in the logistics of the recordings. Did that make them presidential records? The National Archives and Records Administration was never given the recordings. As Mr. Branch tells it, Mr. Clinton hid them in his sock drawer to keep them away from the public and took them with him when he left office. My organization, Judicial Watch, sent a Freedom of Information Act request to NARA for the audio tapes. The agency responded that the tapes were Mr. Clinton's personal records and therefore not subject to the Presidential Records Act or the Freedom of Information Act. When sued in federal court and asked the judge to declare the audio tapes to be presidential records and, because they weren't currently in NARA's possession, compel the government to get them back. Get them. In defending NARA, the Justice Department argued that NARA doesn't have a, quote, duty to engage in a never-ending search for potential presidential records, unbelievable, unquote, that weren't provided by NARA by the president at the end of his term. Nor, the department asserted, does the Presidential Records Act require NARA to appropriate potential presidential records forcefully. Appropriate. The government's position was that Congress had decided that the president and the president alone decides what is a presidential record and what isn't. He may take with him whatever records he chooses at the end of his term. Judge Amy Berman Jackson agreed. Quote, since the president is completely entrusted with the management and even the disposal of presidential records during his time in office, she held, it would be difficult for this court to conclude that Congress intended that he would have less authority to do what he pleases with what he considers to be his personal records. Judge Jackson added that the PRA, the Presidential Records Act, contains no provision obligating or even permitting the archivist to assume control over records that the president categorized and filed separately as personal records. At the conclusion of the president's term, the archivist only assumes responsibility for the presidential records. PRA does not confer any mandatory or even discretionary authority on the archivist to classify the records. Under the statute, this responsibility is left solely to the president. I lost because Judge Jackson concluded the government's hands were tied. Mr. Clinton took the tapes and no one could do anything about it. The same is true with Mr. Trump. Although he didn't keep records in his sock drawer, he gathered newspapers, press clippings, letters, notes, cards, photographs, documents, and other materials in cardboard boxes. Then Mr. Trump, like Mr. Clinton, took those boxes with him when he left office. As of noon on January 20, 2021, whatever remained at the White House was presidential records. Whatever was taken by Mr. Trump was not. That was the position of the Justice Department in 2010 and the ruling by Judge Jackson in 2012. A decade later, the government should never have gone searching for potential presidential records, nor should it have forcefully taken records from Mr. Trump. The government should lose U.S. v. Trump. If the courts decide otherwise, I want those Clinton tapes. I mean, folks, this is why people have an issue. And again, maybe I should even play the clip. This is why people have an issue with the current state of justice, which isn't in fact justice at all. It's more like an injustice because you cannot have multiple standards for different people, different groups of people, et cetera, et cetera. It's getting a little bit ridiculous. You can't survive like this. All right. And I know it's 1:13. Do I have time to, yeah, Fox referring to, Fox referring to Biden as the wannabe dictator. It's pretty funny. And look at, here we go. Here it is. Here it is. I do want to play this, actually. I do, folks. I think it's important because I think what Molly says is a good way to tee in how I can help you understand what these certain voters are feeling like. All right. So let's go to RCP. Let's go to Real Clear Politics. And let me make sure that there's not going to be a commercial at the beginning of this puppy. And then we'll go from there. There probably will be. Hold on. Love the site, but a lot of ads, right? A lot of ads. It's almost there. Give it a second. I just decided at the last minute I wanted to play this because I do think it's rather important. All right. Bang. Here we go. All right. So let me turn on the volume. Are we sharing this? We are not. Add it to the stream. Let's make it nice and big for you. And I think what she says speaks to millions and millions of people's views. But also, like I said, first of all, some of you may be those voters I'm talking about. So you don't have to explain this to you in all that much detail. But there are people in this country that feel like they are constantly under assault by the man, right? The club, this class of society that looks down on them. And by the way, they're not normal conservatives. They're not even Republicans. Many of them live in inner cities. Many of them absolutely live in urban areas. Many of them live in suburban areas, but feel out of place, like they're not one of them. They're everywhere. And that's why, by the way, we're seeing the geographical shift as well. But let's play Molly and her with Howard Kurtz, another total beta. And it's again, it's a major problem with the Tucker was right about the decline in male masculinity and testosterone in this country. It serves a role, it serves a function. I'm not going to apologize for it. And I'm not talking about sexual orientation, friends. I mean, I knew homosexual Green Berets and homosexual Navy SEALs who were pretty damn alpha, actually. I'm talking about beta. There's a difference. Let's rock.
Donald Trump is presumed innocent. This is a sad time for the country. But most of the media conservatives who are defending the former president, and not all aren't mostly grappling with the substance of the indictment, which is he's accused of repeatedly holding back and hiding classified documents.
That's not true, by the way. I absolutely reject that premise, what he said, Howard Kurtz. There are people who are doing that. The people who are replying to those arguments from Robert Barnes, from Mike Davis, from Dershowitz, who certainly isn't on the right, they're not responding with legal arguments. They're simply, you're going to hear it right now. You're going to hear the normal nonsense right now.
Documents, but rather attacking the Justice Department.
Well, that's because the larger context here is so important. I do think people would have been willing to hear from a Department of Justice that they needed to indict their top political opponent and hear that in good faith if we hadn't experienced what we have for the last 6 years from this Department of Justice. We have a Department of Justice that had Hillary Clinton, who was never a president and never will be a president, mishandling classified information, and they invented a new legal standard simply to let her go. We have all the paperwork.
No, what was it? Get me the specific words by James Comey. No responsible or credible prosecutor. Something. No prosecutor would bring a case like this. Remember that? Well, so much for that.
With President Obama, President Clinton. We had theft of documents from the National Archives by a Clinton associate, and nothing has happened to those people. We had the Russiagate collusion hoax, in which the Department of Justice invented a conspiracy, or participated in a Democrat-invented conspiracy theory to say that Donald Trump was a traitor. Right. This week, we learned that Joe Biden was credibly accused by a very serious whistleblower of a $5 million bribery scheme, and the FBI worked to cover it up. So you're absolutely right that people are talking about the broader context, because that's the most important thing here. Nobody takes the Department of Justice seriously so long as they fail to include exculpatory evidence and they participate in this kind of hoax over and over and over again.
All right. So, I mean, that I think is actually enough what you said there. The bottom line is, again, what she said, is something I had just said before. It really can't be said enough. When they were impeaching Donald Trump for the phone call with Zelensky, and Trump's defense was, I'm the president and I have a duty. I remember the tweet like it was yesterday, to seek out corruption and destroy corruption. They knew it. They knew he was right. And they did and said nothing. Nothing. And by the way, I meant to bring this up with John O'Shea before. The State Department refused to give Yuri Lutsenko, who was being called a crook by the Democrats. It's funny because in that very now infamous clip about Joe Biden bragging about getting the special prosecutor fired, he's referring to Yuri Lutsenko as, we got a good one in there. Yuri was considered a good one until, what's her name? Cutthroat Maria went in and handed him the prosecution list, which he to this day still says it was lost in translation. It wasn't, and he said it like that, like it's a physical list, but that she gave him a list. She gave him a list, not physically handed him a list. She rattled off names of those that would not be prosecuted, including Hunter Biden. And to shut down the Burisma case. And he wanted to come into the impeachment hearing and testify that had been lost in translation and the fact checks in America are wrong. She, in fact, did. Your star witness paraded into my office and, in fact, told me to drop the investigation against Hunter Biden. and the State Department would not give him a visa to do it. Todd Wood had to go to Ukraine to interview him at CD Media, and it didn't get mainstream coverage. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, you know what? I think that's good enough. Let's move on to the first state that I'm going to show you. I already told you we're going to talk about Florida, but this is Texas in 2016. All right. This is the Texas exit polls, CNN, which is done by Edison Research, right? Later goes into the Roper database, right? Let's first look at age. And I'm just going to read you. You can follow along if you want with the others, but I'm just going to read you the difference. Let me slide over my side of 2020. 18 to 29, Clinton carried 55 to 36 over Donald Trump in the state of Texas. 55, 36. In 2020, Biden lost 2 points of support off of that from 59 to 57, and Trump gained 4 points for a net swing of 6, and Biden carried the 18 to 29 age group 57 to 40. All right. In the more detailed breakdown, which is what we do, 56-34 was the 18 to 24. Again, a 6-point swing, and Trump went to 38. The 25 to 29 this is the difference. So Biden actually got probably the third-party candidate presence, but Biden actually won 55% of the 25 to 29, but Trump rose to 42. Why am I bringing this up? Actually, too, before we move on, let's talk about the 30 to 44, because this is the prime age group where the most swing is happening, even though it's like everyone under 40, but really let's focus on under 45 with the emphasis, too, for sure, on 18 to 24. But the 30 to 44 age group, Clinton carried by 10 points in the state of Texas, 51 to 41. In 2020, they tied 49-49. All right. So, and then with older voters, Trump won 45 to 64, 52 to 44 over Clinton. And in 2020, he won them 55 to 44 over Biden. And then the same thing with 65 and older. He also increased his vote share from 52 to 58. And then Clinton's fell from Democratic candidate fell from 45 for Clinton to 41 for Biden. All right. If you break it down to the details, the 30 to 39, you can see that Clinton carried it 51 to 39 in 2020, in 2016, whereas in 2020, the 30 to 39 was basically, once again, almost tied, 50 to 47. And I know I'm bombarding you with numbers here, but just stick with me here. All right. So this massive shift from voters under 45 is a really big deal, especially those two age groups, the 30 to 39 and the 18 to 24. Now, where did it come from? All right. If we look at race, Trump won 57 of the Anglo vote, as they say in Texas, compared to 37 for for Hillary Clinton. Clinton won 89% of the black vote, 8% went to Trump. Latinos, 66% went to Clinton, 28% went to Trump. Asians, right? Same thing. If we look at 2020, there's a little bit, the way they did the exit poll in 2020 is a little bit weird, but Trump increased his black vote share marginally, but then so did Biden. So it was basically a wash, 90 to 9. Trump won 66% of the white vote coming from older voters. So where did the younger vote come from? He lost Latinos 66 to 28. But in 2020, he only lost them 58 to 41. And that's why we saw massive shifts in places like Starr County and Zapata County, South Texas, where Trump carries these districts that every single Republican lost in 2022, including Texas 15. Should have flipped. Total dereliction. But that's what it is. Anyway, this came from, if you look age, race by age, let's look at 2020 and compare it. And there's sex by race. Hold on, let me just go up and hit the search bar. This is like ridiculous. Race, age. I guess in this one I should have picked the other one, but in general, where did it come from? It came from Hispanic men, mostly. Yes, some women under the age of 45, including younger voters. All right. Same thing with Florida. Let's go to Florida now. All right. Oh, this was which one did I do here? This is 2016. Oh, come on, Texas. My God. That was supposed to be Texas. But you're going to see it the same anyway. It's going to be the same. Watch. All right, so the 30 to 34 was actually pretty close here. Oh, okay. So, yeah, where's the race? All right, 61-34. Latino was 61-34. The age isn't as pronounced in this one, but let's go to Florida now. Basically, not going to repeat everything I just did, but can I get this one? Oh, that's 2020 is the one that won't give race by age. All right. Florida. Let me change 2020 to Florida. And we're going to see largely the same thing here. Wait for that to roll up. Trump won the white vote in Florida 64-32. He lost non-white 71-24 against Hillary Clinton. In 2020, he won the white vote 62-37. All right, so actually a little bit less. However, the Latino vote was damn near split. All right. And let me see if I can get you specifics here. Race. So he lost Latinos 62-35, but in 2020, it was 53-46. Right, let me get age specifically. I don't know why they changed it. Just the order. They changed the order in which things, like region is first in 2020. It's always last with area, but they changed it this time. All right. So if you look by age, Trump, you can see, won largely off the backs of older voters. If you look at age detail, he lost 30-39, 56-38 against Hillary Clinton. However, in 2020, he won them 50-48. The 18-24, again, big shift, 63-27. In 2020, 57-42. Massive double-digit swing with younger voters in the state of Florida. Interestingly enough, if you look at, and let me see if I can get it, 2022. Interestingly enough, Ron DeSantis won his reelection by almost 20 points, right? But he did it on the back of older voters. He did not do that well with younger voters at all. It was a midterm. That's the national. Let's go to governor. Come on. Florida. Load it up. Age is first in this one, which is great in the midterms. All right. So he just won 65 and older pretty significantly, 64-36. But he did lose the 30-39 age group, whereas Trump won it 50-48. 40-49, Trump also won 51-41. Ron DeSantis did a lot better with that age group. And as he gets older, you can see that's more pronounced. Trump only carried 65 and older, 55-45, right? But that's who's missing. There are people missing from the electorate. So when Trump says, I got more votes, it was a midterm, right? So that's obvious. Like it's worth saying. However, Trump won more broadly, even though he won by, over just under 3 points. I mean, just under 4 points, I believe. He won more broadly across different age groups. All right. So my point is, it was already happening. And what we're seeing now is just a continuation of that. I can't get this on the screen for you, but if you go to the California poll from Emerson yesterday, if you look at the difference between DeSantis and Trump against Joe Biden, then you can see where it's coming from. It's coming largely from younger and non-white voters. Hold on, I'm waiting for this to open up, and I'll read you some of the some of the crosstabs. Come on. Okay. So, no, I was right the first time. They're pretty weird from Emerson, but you got to find them. Give me 1 second. You approve, disapprove. Okay. Where's the head-to-heads? Anyone who's as old as me, stunned to see Dianne Feinstein's approval rating at 22% in the state of California. Just unbelievable. No clear front runner for the Democratic Senate, by the way. Adam Schiff is basically in a tie with Barbara Lee. He's at 12.5. Barbara Lee's at 10.7. Jessica Resendez is at 14.9. Katie Porter also 10.7. So nobody really has a clear advantage with Democratic Hispanics. All right, let me get down to, here's the Republican primary. That's not what I'm looking for, though. But I will tell you this. Among Democrats, Trump leads 46.2 to 7.7. California is a bit of it is technically open, but I would say that it is more like a mixed or semi-open, which all of those rules will be on the map. All right, but he's leading among Republicans 54.5 to DeSantis' 18.7. And here's where people think that California is a good place to challenge Trump because, well, it's more moderate. And the truth is, it's really not more moderate. It's more liberal. But the liberal groups actually are favoring Trump because they're younger and more non-white. So this conventional wisdom that you can beat Trump in a more moderate environment in California is wrong, because in California, it's so much less white. You can beat, or you can do better. I'm not going to say you can beat him, because there's not many places they are beating him. You can do better against Trump if you're DeSantis in a white electorate that is more moderate and more educated. But Trump is still carrying those voters. It's just the least margins. And where is race? Hispanics, Trump 58.2, DeSantis 15. Whites only 51.23. See what I mean? African Americans 71% for Trump, 14 for Ron DeSantis, 14 for Nikki Haley. Asians 50 Trump, 23.5 for Mike Pence, 12% for Ron DeSantis. Other or multiple races, which is Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander, which, by the way, it's Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander month. What's the other one? Alaskan Native. There's definitely Alaskan Natives and Samoan. That kind of. There is actually a large percentage of the electorate that is that in the state of California. Not as much in the Republican primary, but overall it is. So it's dominated by Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, stuff like that in California. But there's a lot of other groups in there. Trump carries them 67 to 17. And so overall, Trump was at 53.3, Mike Pence 10.3, Ron DeSantis 18.8, everyone else in single digits. All right, now by age, 18 to 34, Trump 57, Mike Pence 12.5, Ron DeSantis 10.7. All right, but if you look at the hypotheticals, and by the way, Trump is still leading with college graduate 47 to 27 for DeSantis. Postgraduate or higher, 44 for Trump, 22 for DeSantis. High school or less, 68 for Trump, 12% for DeSantis. Vocational or technical school, 71% for Trump, 16% for DeSantis. Associate degree, some college, 48 Trump, 16% for DeSantis. So, Trump needs just a tad of the rest of the undecideds and the someone else's to hit 50 with that group as well. Women, again, fueled Trump's lead. He is winning men 49.4 to 25 for Ron DeSantis, but he's winning women by a larger margin. The only state we have not found this to be the pattern is Florida, where Trump was actually winning men by a significant margin in our polling, but women were much closer. 57% women are backing Trump, 57.3 to 12.1 for that can't be right, that thing, Laura, for 12.1 for DeSantis. I think that was from yesterday, Laura. I just got a bing. He's leading in Los Angeles. This is a big blow to the California plan. He's leading in Los Angeles 46.2 to 17 for DeSantis. San Diego 68 to 15. Team DeSantis thought they were going to be able to carry San Diego and Orange County. Right now they're getting clobbered. 54 to 28 in Orange County, which is a big blow. Anyone who's trying to challenge Trump is going to have to win Orange County. Inland Empire 56 for Trump, 9% for DeSantis. The Central Coast, 62 for Trump, 17 for DeSantis. In the Central Valley, 56 for Trump, 32 for DeSantis, which I actually found to be a little bit surprising. I thought the Central Valley would be more Trumpy than some of the others. All right, let's get to the head-to-heads. And there we go. So Joe Biden's obviously carrying, he's obviously ahead in California, but it's interesting by how much. It's 53.6 for Joe Biden, or 54 to 32 for Trump. And if you look at Hispanics, Trump is carrying 34% of Hispanics. He's only carrying 35% of whites, a very liberal state like that, right? But he's getting Trump is getting 12% of the African American vote, and 23 of the Asian. Multiple other races, again, that Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander, actually going for Trump, 47 to 40. All right, so skirt down, and we'll go back to age in a second. Or I could just tell you, 18 to 34 is 55 for Biden, 31 for Trump. All right, and the high school less, very different than the rest of the country. All right, but against Joe Biden, DeSantis is trailing by more, 54 to 28. And if you look at where is this coming from, Trump is in the 30s with Hispanics, DeSantis is in the 20s. And he's not doing much better among whites, 32%. He only gets single digits of African-American support, where Donald Trump gets double digits. And he's even trailing behind with Asians. Now, in that other or multiple race category, he is carrying that over Biden as well, just not by as much, about 2 points less. But goes to show you that age group is getting much, The 18 to 34, 22% for DeSantis. So, I could keep going over and over again and just pounding with one argument, one data set over another. We could go into the YouGov data set, and it will show you the same exact thing. And I kept that up the entire time. Sorry about that. But I was looking at a crosstab on an Excel spreadsheet anyway, so you wouldn't have been able to see it. But, the bottom line is, this is everywhere. And it's not new, but it's getting more pronounced now. And when we just, for instance, pull the state of Florida, it's literally every single age group. So, and while, again, he does all right, Trump does all right with older voters, he's actually not doing as well with the 65 plus crowd as DeSantis. DeSantis is a few points more, but it's more than made up by how much better he does in younger age groups, in non-white age groups, and across the board. All right, so it's 138. It's a little. Let's look at the map. So again, bottom line is here, folks. This is everywhere. It's not new, but it is significant. And I'm starting to think that I'm thinking Barnes and Adams are onto something. Barnes and Scott Adams, I think, are really onto something. That some of these people feel like that. It's hard for them. I'm a middle-aged white guy, so it's hard for me to explain it. But some of these people, well, not really, because I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. And it would be so much easier to explain this to my peers if they were not born with a silver spoon in their mouth, like most of them were. They are struggling every day. And they feel like the system persecutes and weighs them down. Laura was joking. What was it? Who said that? It was a 1990s rap song, and basically, that they're. I shouldn't say it because I'm white, but basically, like, the man just tries to keep you down, and maybe there's some relationship there, or maybe there's some mutual. They can identify with him. And I guess that's how Barnes put it on Monday. They can strangely identify with a older, I don't want to say older, but he's getting up there. White billionaire. Because the system is always after him. And it's not just name recognition. Because the truth is, you just read it. I just read it to you in California. It's not only my polling, although I'm, of course, looking at my polling with more scrutiny because I trust my own work more than I trust others. But you can see it clear as day that it's not name recognition alone, because Biden's support is higher against DeSantis among these groups than it is when he faces Trump. So these are people who say, if it's Biden versus Trump, I'm going with Trump. If it's Biden versus someone else, I guess I'll go with Biden. All right, so we're going to get you this delegate map, fill it in a whole lot more, obviously. But where's there? I thought I had some rules in here. I guess not. Come on, really? I may have screwed it up. I may have done something. Well, Iowa's in there, but there will be more of this too. Iowa, 40 delegates. Closed caucus. Only registered party members may participate in the caucus. We'll basically have rules like that, and whether or not there is a threshold for them. You can see the delegates here. There are blocks 0 to 40, 40 to 80, 80 to 120, 120 to 60, and 160 plus. Texas and California are the only two that have more than 160 delegates. Florida's now up. I know some other maps have it at 122 because of the census and the rule changes for Republicans. The estimated delegates in the state of Florida will be 125. Because it's a closed primary, it's helping Donald Trump. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I did literally see a poll with independents in it in the state of Florida as I was doing some research. It is a closed primary, and independents cannot vote in the state of Florida in a primary. The ballot is different. North Carolina, by the way, is a little bit weird. Oh, look, their rules are in there. I'll read it. Semi-closed. We're going to have a couple of different terms. Some people will say like a mixed primary. We're going to have semi-closed and even semi-open. Like Colorado to us is more like a semi-open primary. It isn't just a free-for-all, but unaffiliateds can vote in it. In several of them, North Carolina is one of them. You can vote. You need, again, a different ballot. If you're a registered Democrat, you will have to vote in the Democratic primary. If you're an unaffiliated voter, previously registered for another party, you can. If you're a third-party voter, you cannot. All right. So voters generally must be registered as a party member in order to participate in that party's primary. A previously unaffiliated voter can participate in the primary of their choice. Winners are determined via a threshold of 30% of the vote plus one. If no candidate reaches this total, a runoff election is held. Very low threshold in the state of North Carolina. Also, big news on the Republican side, there is no more caucus in the state of Nevada. It is a hybrid kind of allocation system. It is now going to be a semi-closed primary. And so it once was a caucus. That was done away with. There was a lot of pushback by some Republicans that did not like it. But Democrats in Nevada kind of wanted to get rid of some progressives like Bernie Sanders. And let me see if I put this correctly. Some progressives like Bernie Sanders were very good in Iowa and Nevada and others of doing like satellite locations or something like that to reach younger, non-white caucus goers. And that really hurt Joe Biden. Really hurt Joe Biden. Hurt Pete Buttigieg in Iowa because he couldn't compete with that. Otherwise, maybe he might have been able to win the Iowa caucuses, but it didn't happen. It didn't work out. So now Nevada is no longer going to be a primary, a caucus. It will be a primary. That's different. They used to be, anyone in the audience ever been in a caucus in Nevada? It used to be a lot of fun. It was definitely different than Iowa because they're just different kinds of voters, but it was super fun. So and so was Iowa. Jonathan Stein says if you're in New York, register now to vote in that party primary. They're really strict about that. The New York ballots are weird, man. Weird. It is a closed primary. They are super strict about it. You better get it done now if you want to vote in a party's primary in the state of New York. You better get it done now. Hurry up and do it. And frankly, I would just say that for everybody. In Florida, I lived there for years, and I had to register as a party, even though I most definitely would have registered unaffiliated. But I had to register if I wanted to participate in a primary. So I did. California, 169 delegates, semi-closed. In Texas, 162, and it's open. It's an open primary. But again, when we polled it, it didn't really seem to matter. So it's just not enough. I mean, even some of them that are going independents, that are going to vote in Texas, they are, and look here, Matthew, some poll worker, there you go. Public service announcement from Matthew and Jonathan. Absolutely, without a doubt, you better get that done because they will give you an issue. Here's Arizona. I saw that comment. Better go register if you want to vote in the primary. Okay? It is a closed primary. Let's see. States that lost delegates. Let me give you a couple of, and this again, best guess, best estimation at this point, but pretty sure I'm right. The presidential green papers are a great resource in case, whoops, I just screwed something up. Yeah, in case you want to learn more about both the Democrat and Republican nominations, the presidential green papers are an awesome resource. I'll get it for you right now, actually. They've been doing this for a very long time. All right, here is, I'm going to send it to locals, going to send it to YouTube, Rumble. All right. Getter. I'm not going to lie to you. It's dry, but it is a great resource. And they give you circa dates. You may have noticed that I gave you more firm dates. Trust me, we did a lot of diligence on this. I know some of it's going to change, but that is at this moment. If we put a date on it, it was something we heard, that it may be done or close to done, but they just haven't done it. They just haven't passed it yet. Many states are still working this out, but that's maybe the agreement. So we really did as much diligence as we can. And eventually, when we're done with the rules, I'll also put up an option to download the data. And that'll mean you can click on it and it will take all the data that you see in the map and download it into an XLS or a CSV file. All right. And then you can look at it yourself or check it out yourself. Alabama lost a delegate from 50 to 49. Alaska lost a delegate from 29 to 28. American Samoa remains 9 delegates. Arizona appears to have, look, they lost a delegate from 16 to 20. They lost a single. They lost 14 now, estimated 14, 43. Again, this stuff could change, but this is pretty damn close. Arkansas will remain at 40. California lost another 3 delegates. For their 172 is what they used to be in 2020, and now they're down to 169. Colorado, 37. Connecticut, 28. Delaware, 16. And if I haven't said it's changed, it's been the same then. DC, 19. There was a change in Florida that was always 122 winner-take-all delegates. It is now 125 winner-take-all delegates. Georgia lost another 7. Well, not another 17. They lost 17 and lost again. Guam, 9. Hawaii, 19. Idaho, 32. Illinois lost 3. So now they're at 64. They were at 67. Indiana, 58. They are staying at 58, it looks like. They went up from 57 in 2016 to 58 in 2020, and it looks like they'll remain there. Iowa will remain at 40. They went up from, in 2016, they only had 30 delegates. Then in 2020, they increased it to 40. Now they're at 40, and they're going to stay there. Kansas, which lost a delegate in 2020, is remaining at 39. Kentucky hasn't changed in years. It remains at 46. Louisiana, still 46. Maine lost 2, is now down to 20. Maryland lost 1, is now down to 37. Massachusetts lost 1, is now down to 40. Michigan lost 18, is now down to 55. And by the way, hold on one second. Let me just put, let me just click on this. Okay, those are all soft. They're all going to be considered soft delegates in the Republican nomination. All right. Basically, soft pledge and soft unpledge. And soft meaning, well, you can read that on the presidential green papers. I don't want to read that whole thing, but it is interesting. Pledged and unpledged, there have been some changes, and you should probably pay attention to it, but on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, they have superdelegates, so it is different. But on the Republican side, there is a total available delegate, 2,467. All right. You need, right, because there's 75 that are soft but unpledged, and there are 2,392 that are soft and pledged, right? Democrats, they got their superdelegates still. You need 1,234 this time to clinch the nomination. Democrats need 1,888 of the soft pledge delegates. They need 2,260 total to nominate of soft unpledged plus pledged delegates. And then hard delegates, there are 4,518 available. Yeah, so they have their super delegates, which certain Republicans wanted to get this year. Do not let people BS you. They were afraid of Donald Trump winning, even though he was indicted and had all these problems. And they wanted super delegates at the convention. So when they tried to engineer something this time, like they did in 16, same damn people, they would be able to have more power to do so. Missouri, where did I leave off? Nope, Michigan, right? I left off. Minnesota stays at 39. Mississippi lost a delegate now from 40 to 39. Missouri, 54. Montana, gained 4, 31. Nebraska, 36. Nevada, gained 1, 26. New Hampshire at 22 still. New Jersey, 49. This really have to. Why am I reading these all out to you? Obviously, I tried to make the color of this puppy mean something to show you, even if there were some states where the non-Trump opposition gained some ground at this point. I'm trying to show you that Trump's strength is all through where it's dark and delegate rich. And then even in the big Northeastern, delegate rich New York, delegate rich New Jersey. He's at 71% in New Jersey. Damn near the same in New York. Ron DeSantis at single digits. And Chris Christie is about to get stomped by 50 points in his own state unless something changes. Then all through the Midwest, maybe they could do something with Wisconsin. But the rest of this is going to be pretty hard to take from Donald Trump, folks, because of the calendar. He's going to have run-ups on Arkansas, and there's going to all these southern delegate-rich states that he is way ahead in. He's way ahead in Virginia. He's way ahead in North Carolina. He's ahead in Georgia. And in Alabama, no one's going to touch him there. No one's going to touch him in Tennessee. No one's going to touch him in Kentucky. There are a lot of delegates in the Trump states. And that's a problem for anyone who wants to beat him. Now, here's one. Washington State, semi-closed primary. 43 delegates. Maybe somebody could pluck something like that away. But Texas, huge number of delegates. Currently, he is polling at, it is a mixed hybrid kind of allocation system, but currently he's polling at a level that would estimate him taking almost every delegate. And in California, if Emerson and PPIC are correct, he would take every one, despite their rule changes. So, and then of course there's Florida, which again, I know I'm right in the state of Florida. I'm very, very, very confident I am right in the state of Florida. Reach out, find those more non-white votes. And by the way, the Florida primary was, because I've seen a lot of people criticize the percentage of non-white votes we had in our poll, for the Republican primary. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2016, the Florida Republican primary was 16% Hispanic. It is going to be 21% Hispanic right now. It's going to be more. Less white, more non-white. Less white, more non-white. In 8 years, Florida has gotten more Republican, but also more non-white. So where the hell are those voters going? Right. All right, back to it. New York, like I said, a lot of delegates. They lost 3, but still a lot of delegates. 91. New Jersey had 49. 22 in New Mexico. North Carolina, 75, up 4. North Dakota, 29. Northern Marianas, 9. Ohio, 78. Down 4, though, from 82. Oklahoma, 43. That's where Governor Stitt just endorsed Ron DeSantis. We'll have to see how that goes, in Oklahoma. And if you want to know, Oklahoma, of course, is a closed primary. So Oklahoma conservatives would need to choose Ron DeSantis, and that would be against what we are seeing is the nationwide, and not only nationwide, mostly the state pattern. Where did I leave off? Oregon, 31. Pennsylvania, 67. And by the way, Oregon's up 3. Pennsylvania is looking like it's going to lose 21 delegates. It had gained 17 in 2020, up from 71 in 2016. It will lose 27 in 2024, now down to 67. Puerto Rico, 23. Rhode Island, 19. South Carolina, still 50. South Dakota, 29. Tennessee, 58. Texas, we showed you before, up 7, 162 now. Utah, 40. Vermont, 17. The Virgin Islands, 9. Virginia, 48. Went down in 2020 by 1 delegate and staying, it looks like, at 43. Or at 48, excuse me. Washington, same deal, went down a delegate in 2020. Looks like it's going to stay there, 43. West Virginia went up in 2020 to 35. Now it will lose 4 delegates, 31. Wisconsin has lost 11 delegates. It was up 10 in 2020 from 42 to 52, and now it is down 11 to 41. Wyoming, 29. So I did that. It is now 157. I did that just in the nick of time. Check out the map. Like I said, more will be added as time goes on, but I tried to really give a good color scheme here to give you an idea of, somebody had said on Twitter last week, like, let's just talk about the freaking math here. Trump is ahead significantly in these very delegate-rich states, and he's going to dominate the South. I mean, can there be states he loses? Yeah, maybe, but I think at the end of the day, he's probably going to win every single southern state. Every single one. At this point, if it was today, he'd carry every single one of them, including Florida. So let's just stop. What are the odds of a punitive vote from a usually blue state? We'll have to see about that. There has been those operations in the past. We'll see. Yeah, maybe he loses Utah. Maybe. I think there was a poll. It was Trump +1 last week. That was it. Utah is a you may think, as people say, it's ruby red. It is a very rhino state. Very rhino state. So you could absolutely see that happening. But he may think he could be a spoiler and peel off some of Trump's Hispanic voters. Who was that? I must have missed the conversation before. Oh, the mayor of Miami. Yeah, that's probably what he's thinking. Let me see if I could do that. I don't see it. I got to be honest with you guys. I don't see it. Mayoral candidates are never strong. Even in areas where they're well-liked, they're never strong. Look at how weak even Michael Bloomberg was. Right? Very, very popular mayor. What are the states he's likely to lose? That at this point is why I'm focused so much on Florida, because I think if we see any movement at all, we're going to see it in Florida first. Folks, I do not buy the WPA Intel poll. I don't buy the public opinion strategies who clearly got rewarded for those polls and is now the actual pollster for the DeSantis campaign. That's really that's a tragedy too, by the way. Having a pollster that gives you such out of the mainstream data. And then I hope they're giving you more accurate data for your actual campaign, because I've seen this before. I've seen it a lot. Marco Rubio, it happened to him in 2016. Same thing. Always putting out these polls. Same people, by the way, close to the same people. Same circles anyway, not same firm, but same circles. And, they told Marco Rubio that he was surging. Don't drop out. You're surging. And, poor Patrick Murray at Monmouth is like, I'll eat my freaking hat if this guy is right. I just polled it. He's down by 8. He's not going to win. He's not going to win his own primary. And they told him to stay in the race, and he embarrassed himself. You lose your own primary, your presidential aspirations are gone forever. And if you're a governor and you lose your own primary, this is the tragedy this will be a tragedy for the people of Florida. You're going to lose your governor either way. Because if he wins, he's going to become the nominee, and he's not going to pay attention to your state at all. If he loses, he's going to be a lame duck, and he's going to try to go back to work and get things done, and he's going to be badly, badly, badly wounded politically. I've seen it before. It's going to happen. At this point right now, it's definitely going to happen. Could things change? Everything can change, folks, in politics. It's such a heavy lift. Anyway, those other two that showed him fairly competitive in North Carolina, I just don't believe it at all. I just don't. This is a very Trumpy state, very, especially in the Republican primary. Look at what, by the way, same people, by the way, bitched at Emerson for showing Ted Budd with such a huge lead in the primary. Trashed me, right? I had to go on. I went on a local, it's a very popular radio program here. And I just said, look, at the end of the day, one of us will be right. The other side will be wrong. Ted Budd easily beat Pat McCrory. Easily. Come on. Give me a break. I've seen it before. And all Ted Budd did was run ads. I'm endorsed by Trump. I love Trump. That's all he did. And he won almost every single county except for Mecklenburg, which he barely lost. Barely lost it. Right, kids. Kurt Schlichter, God love him. Good guy. But these people don't do this for a living. We can get into the we can get into the little arguments, which are really filled with platitudes, so we can get deep into the data. And that's what I always try to do with you guys here. It's not just me now, folks. It's everybody. He is the stronger general election candidate. He gets a vote that others don't get. It doesn't matter about the independents that other people keep bringing up. Mitt Romney won the independents. Didn't matter. He lost because he didn't drive his base out. By the way, independents follow leaders just like the rest of us. It's human nature. And if you do not have the courage of your own conviction, nobody will follow you. And if you do win them, you'll win a smaller share because that percentage of the electorate will just be small. You're not inspiring people to come out. Right? So simply not true anyway. Independents right now are going for Trump in every single poll. So, I don't know what at some point, the argument just doesn't make any more sense, and they just keep repeating it, even though every single day something comes out, with something comes out and just totally puts a stomp on it. Basham was right. Patrick Basham is right. Winning the middle is overrated. All right. What you need to do is bring in new voters and bring as much of your own out as you possibly can. Barack Obama totally abandoned the middle. Totally abandoned them. And he said, I'm going to just drive my vote up. Because Mitt Romney's a lamer. He's a lame boy. He's awkward. He doesn't connect. So the middle's not going to be that big. That was their strategy. Axelrod and Pluffs and the rest of them. That was their strategy. And it worked. The biggest share was the Democratic share. Just wasn't enough. Yeah, it's like Trump leads with independents, but he can't win independents. Well, then how the hell is he winning independents? By the way, the last Republican to win independents was Donald Trump. They're using like midterms to make this crazy argument. It's just so weird. When, by the way, it's not just me anymore. Real Clear Politics, even NBC News, so many now thoughtful, in-depth analysis that shows this idea it was Donald Trump that cost Republican the election is simpleton stuff. It's simpleton stuff. It's not accurate. And it's just like, it is a simpleton argument because it's not grounded in any reality. There's so many more things happening that did that and happened, and refusing to acknowledge it just to make, because it's so simple to blame some guy who wasn't even on the ballot. Like Robert said the other day on What Are the Odds? It's completely backward. You're completely backward from the truth. All right. So with that in mind, Friday, we'll do this some more. I am, somebody asked me about Illinois as well. Well, I got Rhode Island. People wanted to do a voter analysis of. So on Friday, we're going to do that. I'll get to Illinois though. All right. But I know a couple of people had asked me for Rhode Island because there have been polls in the past where it's like, it looks like it's really close. And then at the last minute, it does go back to Democrats, but what the hell's going on? So we'll definitely get there. All right. So Friday we'll do Rhode Island, and I'll find a spot for Illinois. I'll find a place for Illinois. All right. All right. Thanks for watching. See you on Friday. Don't forget to join the People's Pundit Locals community at peoplespundit.locals.com. peoplespundit.locals.com. Share the public polling project far and wide, if you will. Thank you very much. And would like to get another national one out pretty soon. And we'll go from there. All right, folks. Thanks for watching. As always, I will see you on Friday. All the best. Stay safe.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love just for a little fun. I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a pet.